Hi, everyone. It's such a joy to welcome you to our second live session of the 5th International Week of Conscientiology. My name is Márcia Donadel, and I'm part of the ISIC team, and I have the privilege of coordinating this year's International Week, an event entirely dedicated to building bridges, interparadigmatic and intercultural. Today's session invites us to explore the theme Universalism, one of the highlights of our program. This is the central theme of our in-person field course, Universalism, a Step Towards Polykarma, to be held in August in Foz do Iguaçu, and a reflection of the evolutionary direction we believe humanity is ready to take. We'll hear directly from Roberto Leimig and Kim McCaul, who helped design the course. We'll explore the motivations behind it, the types of experiences involved, and how this activity can expand our perspectives. I'd like to also acknowledge the presence of Andrea de Chermont, who is coordinating the StreamYard studio today and ensuring everything flows smoothly behind the scenes. Thank you, Andrea. Before we dive into the key concepts of universalism and consciential openness, I'd love to share with you a short video that captures the spirit of this International Week, its diversity, depth, and the vibrant international community that brings it to life. Let's take a look. Please, Andrea.
In a world where little seems to be within our control, understanding our own consciousness allows us to live a purposeful life. The 5th International Week of Conscientiology provides an excellent opportunity to access the profound understandings of multidimensional consciousness developed at the Center for the Higher Studies of Conscientiology in Iguaçu Falls, Brazil. Join us in person to experience the unique energies of the center and connect with like-minded individuals from around the globe, or attend online for mind-opening insights and practical tools for your personal evolution. The 5th International Week of Conscientiology, your gateway to evolutionary excellence. Enroll now and be part of the consciousness movement.
Now, I'd like to invite each of our guests to say hello in a few words. So, welcome, Roberto.
Hello, Márcia. Hello, everyone. I'm very glad to stay with you to discuss and talk about one of the topics that I consider one of the most challenging in terms of evolution, the universalism. So I hope to discuss have a nice talk with you about this topic.
Thank you. Now let's welcome Kim. Hello, Kim.
Hey, Márcia. Hey, Roberto. And hello, everybody who's watching. My name is Kim. I'm an anthropologist, normally based in Australia, although currently I'm traveling in Europe. And I've been studying conscientiology since about 1997. And I've been to Iguaçu Falls and the Higher Studies of Conscientiology twice. The last time was in 2013, and I'm planning to come back for this International Week. And I'm very excited about that and about sharing some of the ideas that we have surrounding that week.
Thank you. Well, it's now my pleasure to give the floor to Roberto, one of the epicons of the course. Just to clarify, an epicon is a person who can hold the energetic field and a specialist in parapsychism, and he is one of the 2 instructors of this course. Roberto has a long-standing trajectory in conscientiology, and today he'll walk us through the key intentions and some experiences that shape this activity. As we go, feel free to post your questions in the chat. We'll bring some of them to our guests later on. So, Roberto, please.
Hi, Márcia. And so, in a course of, we work with a field of energy. We call that a course a field course. So in this kind of course, we can make lots of experiments to test our capacity to interact with other dimensions. So we are preparing not only content about universalism, but some techniques and methods that you can interact with other dimensions, including other consciousness. So we are trying to get in touch with extraphysical consciousness just to uh, get more approximately or more get in touch with this theme and the way of they are thinking about universalism, because I think that our experience as a human being are very strict, very limited about universalism in practice, because we just have a few experience, like for example, doing visit to the moon or other uh, short visit around the globe. But in practice, the interaction with other dimension or other uh, points or places of the universe is very rare in general for the humanity. But for example, by the parapsychism, we can interact, we can have experience that we can get more in touch with the other consciousness we have, which have ability to go through the universe to different places and different parts of the universe that usually is unknown for us. So it's a high challenge for us to elaborate a course that you can uh, do these experiments in practice. So we are very happy to engage with this team to do these experiments.
Thank you. Now I'd like to add Kim here to the conversation, and I would like to take a moment perhaps to explore the inspiration and knowledge behind this field course. Uh, it includes a range of rich and experiential activities. So, can you share some behind the scenes of the planning and the inspiration of the course, Kim?
Yeah, of course. Well, I guess it's helpful to set the context, and that is that this particular international week is being organized by ISIC, which is the organization that well, both Marcia and I certainly are volunteers with, and the ISIC's speciality is international engagement, international bridge building, and our focus is wanting to make conscientiology accessible to people outside of Brazil, where it started, right, and where so much of it was developed, and so much of it was developed in Portuguese and in a particular cultural context. And so within ISIC, one of the founding kind of values and principles is to make information accessible to a wider audience, multilingual audience, cross-cultural audience. And that flows directly into this idea of universalism, right? So we see universalism as a core value that guides ISIC's work, really. And so we wanted to create, this is the first time that our organization is organizing such a kind of course, a field course, which are a very important part of the conscientiology pedagogy, right? The learning experience, because they allow, as Roberto was just saying, right, they allow the participants direct experience of multidimensionality. And in doing so, they facilitate often new inspirations and new ideas. And so the theme that we give those field courses will determine or can, influence the kind of inspirations and new ideas that we have in the course of that field course. And so we chose universalism as part of that because of its ISIC's core value, right? And so the idea in any field course is that it provides a combination of what we call in Conscientiology the mental somatic side, right? So the thoughts, the new ideas, the neosynapses, right? New synapses, facilitated through. So there's a learning part. There's discussions, right? To start opening our minds and giving us new ideas, and then there is this intense focus on an energy field that is created through the energy work of all the participants, guided by Roberto and Luciania, who will be the other epicon working with him. And as a group, we will create this intense energy field, and that supports the connection with the non-physical team, the extra-physical helpers, to then work with the ideas that we've been generating and to help expand and ideally, right, make little evolutionary jumps in the course of the event, in the course of the field course. So yeah, Márcia, I don't know. Do you want me to go into more detail about things, or what else?
I was wondering, I would like to add perhaps a question here that's a curiosity that maybe we can explore a little. What makes this theme, universalism, central, a central evolutionary theme right now? What are the complexities that we have in the world that call for this, the emergence of this study and the experience of this topic?
Yeah, I can see this topic. Yeah, it's very, very important, especially nowadays, because we are in the 20, 21, yeah, 20th, the first
21st century. Yeah.
21st century, and we still are living as an animal. Lots of wars, lots of problems about survivance. Yes,
Survival.
yeah, lots of problems about survival, and so now until nowadays, we're still fighting with one to another, and so it's a real. It can show us that we are still living as an animal, just fighting, just to trying to get more space, territoriality, problems with territoriality. So nowadays we have a chance to think as a consciousness. With this experiment, we think you can overpass our limits of animal. So reconfigure our values, and so it's a moment just to get in touch with our intrinsic values that make us a consciousness and not only as an animal. So the universalism is that chance, because we have lots of problems also, not only about wars, but the way we treat each others. We have problems with discriminations of all kinds of discriminations, and so that's why we make us typical primate, an animal which we can reproduce some behavior that is the same of the animals. So the universalism is a chance to start to change this. When you have an opportunity to interact with other consciousness, we think different, including, for example, extra-physical consciousness, or even it's possible to interact with extraterrestrial consciousness. So, in a field of energy, which we work with multidimensionality, we have different opportunity to interact with the values of universalism in practice. So it's a real opportunity and a challenge for us, for all of us, to interact in this level of manifestation of consciousness, not more anymore with an animal. Okay?
So then maybe I'm understanding here that developing parapsychism and parapsychic perceptions can help us enhance and expand our ideas about the who we are as a consciousness and how we interact in the world, in our roles in life. So I don't know, but just sharing this thought.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, Marcia, because, and that's part of the process, right? The relearning process in conscientiology generally, and I think in field courses, and that is that we are wanting to shift our perspective from the ego identity, right? Kim McCaul, white male, blah blah blah, all this story, Márcia Donadel, this, all our ego identities that we interact with in the physical life, to our consciential identity, our identity as consciousness, that has had countless lives and in many different bodies and cultures and conditions. And so then, you start seeing from that perspective the superficiality of these present identities. And I think just picking up on the points Roberto was making, right? We are in this situation right now. In a way, it's been like this throughout the history of humanity, but it seems maybe because of social media and because of our interconnectedness that we all have now, it seems amplified. This polarization that you're seeing around the world into political parties, into religious groups, into ethnic identities, and you have all these hot spots of conflict arising out of it. And it is very much part of the human DNA, right? I think if you look at, I was thinking about sports, you associate with a team and then you kind of like to make fun of the other team and you cheer when your team wins and you cry when your team loses, and you have this, and it can be quite satisfying, as a human being. It's emotionally impactful to be identified with an in-group and an out-group. As an anthropologist, actually, that's one of the first things I learned. I remember one of my first lectures I ever had was in undergraduate studies, was that it's the lecturer making the point that it's completely natural for humans to have, we are here, we are the humans, and those people on the other side of the mountain, they are the strange ones. They smell bad, they behave weird, they are not properly human. This kind of distinction is very deeply inside our DNA and our cultural memories across millennia. And when we shift to being a consciousness, the perspective of consciousness, then we go beyond just the universalism of all of humanity, but it also includes all the animal life and the plant life on this planet, which is also all consciousness and evolution. And as Roberto said, we go to extraterrestrial life. We expand beyond this planet, and we expand beyond this dimension to consciousnesses that are more evolved than us, who are also on an evolutionary journey, right? We essentially, I guess, part of the universalism is to see and to experience all of life as an evolutionary journey of consciousness across infinite time.
Interesting, very interesting. One of the other things that I'm very curious about is that perhaps I believe that one of the goals of the course is also to support each participant in recognizing their own path, their own traits, particular traits that are perhaps strong traits, and other ones that we could work harder on to evolve. What do you think is the posture that a participant could choose to in order to participate and enjoy more of the course?
I think you talk about important aspect the course, because when you research consciousness as a whole, we start to focus on the main traits of the manifestation of that consciousness. So ourself or the others. So when you start to identify our main traits of manifestation, like for example, uh, the way of thinking about universalism, or the way you are feelings about your feelings, kind of feelings you have. So you have different traits that manifestate our way of consciousness, our identity. So one of these traits is the universalism, but we have lots of other traits related to universalism. For example, the open-minded, how much we can identify, we can measure our capacity to be open-minded. So when you capt, or when you identify some different ideas, how do you react? How do you use to react with different ideas, with different kind of person, with different cultures? So how do you use to behave in a situation that you are in unexpected situations, for example? How do you use to react? So you have different ways to measure our level of universalism, for example, like that. And so when you start in an environment with a multidimensional manifestation, like a field of energy, so we can have we have an opportunity to manifestate different kinds of phenomena. For example, like clairvoyance, like inspiration for new ideas, out of body experience, different forms of out of body experience. So we have different phenomena related to parapsychism, our other sense to perceive the universe. So you can, for example, have a expansion of idea, a mental expansions. So these kinds of phenomena help us to, reorganize our values, the way of we are manifesting. So this exercise to look for ourselves in terms of the main traits that we have, and how can we react with these traits. We can have a reconfiguration of our manifestation, especially in terms of values related to our life today. So, yeah, we will have a good opportunity to test, to have an experiment, to try to improve our level of universalism. Because what is the importance of the universalism? Just to think. The first thing that I consider is that we can create an environment to think as a consciousness, not only as an animal, or need to survive and need to work, and and so this opportunity, I think you can make a good environment to create this this environment to get interactions with other consciousness, especially extraphysical consciousness, that think in universe as a universalism in practice. So I think, I hope you can join us to this challenge to make this course, this event, because as I had said, we will select some contents just to test our level of universalism. So especially our main traits of manifestations. That's the focus of the course, and you can explore more discussing here with you.
Thank you. Would you like to add to this idea, Kim?
Well, I don't know if I'm exactly adding, or I'm having perhaps. I guess it's an adding. I had sort of a thinking about a different angle as
Okay.
Roberto was talking, and in response to your question, which is I was thinking about what it means to come to this course from someone from overseas, right? So I guess we're doing this live here. We're having this discussion because we're wanting to speak to people who are in my kind of situation, in that we're not in Brazil and we perhaps don't, Portuguese is not our first language. And we would like to access, or we're thinking about accessing or going more deeper into conscientiology and traveling to Foz do Iguaçu and taking part in the course, right? And I guess in that context, that itself, I think, is a step into the experience of universalism in a physical life, right? Going out of our cultural zones into another space and crossing that that boundary. For many people, if you haven't traveled much, like especially I know from conversations with people in Australia, that there's some concern about going to Brazil. It's very far away, it's exotic, and sometimes you hear sort of issues about it being dangerous and so on. So it takes some courage to take that step. It's a commitment financially, it's a commitment by time. And I guess the point I was thinking about, that this course that we're talking about now, this field course, sits within a whole week of activities, right? So if you're going to travel to Foz and you experience this field course, it's embedded in all these other activities that will increase the impact, increase what you're getting out of it, increase the space, and there'll be a lot of people taking care of you to ensure you have a good experience. Supporting people with the travel, supporting people with the accommodation, like about finding how to do that and how to navigate that, and then multidimensionally. I guess I can say we touched briefly on the environment that a field course creates, right? It's a specific space where you have heightened connections with multidimensionality, with chances of experiencing parapsychism. But actually, if you're an outsider coming to the CAEC, the Center for Higher Studies of Conscientiology, that itself is an environment that is distinct, right? You feel it when you go there. It's been there for, I think it's celebrating 30 years in July. So that's 30 years of dedicated community of people focusing on working with multidimensionality, on doing energy dynamics every day, big courses regularly. And you really have that sense of stepping into, my last experience, which was 12 years ago, gave me this sense of stepping into a dimension almost, right? Another dimension where I was thinking more clearly. I felt much more connected to my parapsychism. And so all of that is something that will support people who are coming to have a really significant and positive experience in their own personal journey of evolution, right? Which is unique for all of us. Paradoxically, one of the aspects of universalism is that we're all on our unique journeys. We're all on an evolutionary journey, but they're all very specific to us. So, yeah.
I was going to ask exactly that, if there is a particular moment or reflection in this course that both of you, had in your experiences, something that stayed with you or helped reframe your own path, because this interaction favors this. Do you have any other example of that happening?
Can you just say that again, Márcia? Of the
A reflection or of a moment that being in a field course, that something stayed with you for longer or helped you reframe your path, perhaps something important or significant that happened.
Yeah, yep. For me, I think the most impactful field courses were probably the first one actually. I think the first one I did in when I first came to Brazil for the first time in 1997. I had a lucid projection on one of the nights, on the night between the 2 days, right? That still stayed with me, and that was significant. And I also had certain experiences in the energetic field that I still sometimes remember. And I think so. In both cases, these are things that over the last, I guess, almost 30 years now, they've come back to me at different times as a kind of reminder of my connection with multidimensionality, right? So I think for me, at least, like conscientiology is not about one big kind of transformational moment and then life is different, right? It's about many steps that help us shift our consciousness towards on a more evolutionary trajectory, not just for this lifetime, but we're setting a trajectory also for our next lifetimes, right? So we're kind of thinking on quite a big scale. And for me, those were these experiences, like they were impactful at the moment and in the moment. But the value I see in them is that they've been reminding me of my connection to multidimensionality for the last 27 years or so. So, yeah.
And for you, Roberto, and being an instructor and having your path in this type of field course, what would you could you
Yeah,
add here?
yeah, I think it's very unpredictable in general, but some kinds of prediction that you can make is that we have used to feel different kinds of sensations in an energetic field that overpass our limit of, of physical sensations. The first thing and basic thing is this. So, and then I think I have some experience, especially in connection with other consciousness, in telepathic communications. I think for me is a real challenge, great challenge, because the velocity and complexity of the thoughts is very different for us. So, wow, I feel very a strong difficult to follow, the way of thinking, the kinds of thoughts. So I think they have to do to be very patient with me, because we have lots of ideas, and complex the ideas, and but it's very difficult to follow. And then I'm trying to write down and talk about this. I have written down some papers and articles describing the characteristics, but just to help me, first of all, to help me to understand the way they think, the way they deal with energy. For example, for us, we have to effort we have a strong effort to to capt, to dominate, or to deal with energies, for example, especially the immanent energy. Like, for example, we are talking about universalism. We have a kind of energy that is especially linked to universalism, that is cosmo energy, the energy widespread in the cosmos. These kinds of energy, when you are in the field of energy, if it's predominate in the field, these kinds of energy can make us in a state of harmony and a state of equilibrium that's very different from the others kinds of energy. Okay, so the cosmos energy for gems, for some consciousness that have practice in universalism, for them is very very common. It's very natural, and for us, make at least about me, make me feel very different and in a state of mental expansion that is very different from my everyday life. So for me, it's very impactant, very very strong to get this experience because you have more near perhaps the original state of a more free consciousness, because in fact we are kind of slave of intraphysicality. You need to survive, we need to work, we need to talk. Talk. They are used to manifestate, to communicate with telepathy. So it's other level of manifestation. Telepathy is it's very quick and complexity of ideas, a way of communication with high level of complexity and deep ideas. So here we have to, adaptate these kinds of idea that you can cap and have inspiration and try to translate and try to understand, to interpret, and you have a lot of influence of our body, né? Our body of of an animal. So for example, the brain used to translate some ideas to a comfort way of understanding because our limitation. We have a cultural accumulation of ideas, especially from education and from the zeitgeist that keep us, a bit distant from the universal values. So when we are going deep in a field of energy, especially with cosmos energy, we will feel some idea and feelings very different from the usual feelings that we have in nowadays, in our everyday life. So I think it's always very important, as Kim has commented, we have just blocking, cultivating and make changes step by step, to captain this way of thinking, some values, some different ideas, in constructing, in reconstructing our way of thinking. So I think we will have a good challenge to improve our level of manifestation.
It's a great opportunity. It seems to be important to. It contributes to deepening the understanding of these topics in our own growth, and how does that contribute to our own growth. And then, but it's up to us to make it every day move towards creating the environment in our life for this to keep happening, so that we keep learning. Very, very interesting. And we were talking about lots of parapsychic phenomena and possibilities that the field course contributes for, or create an environment to facilitate. And for example, out-of-body experiences, clairvoyance, and etc. But what distinguishes conscientiology of other approaches to these phenomena? Can you explore on that thought?
I think the main difference is because we can provoke, we can plan to do this, and using especially our will, you know, but not only the will, but the will manifested by the domination of energy, for example, by the domination of the way of thinking. You know, you have to be aware, to be concentrating on this in the techniques, and the techniques use only your will. So by this way, we can test our our strong traits to make our will more and more strong, applied to energy, applied to our mentality, to dominate our mentality. For example, people used to be, it's to be expected that the people think quickly and quickly, you know, the way I think. But sometimes you just to be aware and be able to stop your thinking, or be calm. You know, the domination of the way of thinking is very important to dosify the velocity of thinking. It's very important. So during the techniques, you test this ability to dominate energy, to dominate the way of thinking. So we will prepare some experiment just to test, especially our capacity to get in touch with other consciousness that has ability to go through the universe, to have mentality of the universalism in practice. That's the importance of the technique that we will applying during this course. We will test during the field of energy. For example, exovision, or the ability, the clairvoyance to distant places in the universe. We also will try the experience, the out of body experience, and try to also to get in touch with telepathy, with extraphysical consciousness, including extraterrestrial consciousness. So we'll uh, try to get some aspects, some behavior, some ideas, some traits of this consciousness. So you will, I hope you will do a good experiment about that.
Thank you. Kim, I would like to ask if you have something to add about this, the distinction of conscientiology from other approaches. And after that, we have a question on the chat, if you'd like to add something.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's an interesting question, right? And if you study different kinds of approaches, like people have been, we were talking before we started the chat about shamanism, right? As the original kind of deliberate interaction with multidimensionality in different ways. And it's tens of thousands of years old, shamanism. And so since then, there's been countless different modes. There's been for many years, there's been religious pathways, but there's also been many other non-religious or kind of less religious pathways. You think about spiritualism and theosophy and anthroposophy and many other things, other sort of schools of thought that work with out-of-body experiences, that recognize the existence of non-physical consciousness, that understand that humans have multiple lives, like that the human life, that consciousnesses, I should say, have multiple human lives. So I've looked at a lot of those also before coming across Conscientiology, and I think you can recognize aspects, right, of many of those things within the way we operate or the values we have and the ideas that we teach in Conscientiology. But for me, I guess the probably two of the core distinctions are, one is the focus on evolution, right? The focus on really understanding ourselves as consciousness and evolution, and that each lifetime contributes is a small piece in this vast development that we all go through. And related to that is that one of the key mechanisms of evolution is enhancing our capacity to provide multidimensional assistance or interassistance, right? To support each other multidimensionally through parapsychism, through out-of-body experiences, through energetic work, through using the energies of our physical body to provide assistance to non-physical people in need, people who are stuck, consciousnesses who are kind of in limbo, right? Who are unconscious of the fact that they're dead, for example, or who have some other issue that's holding them back. The deliberate, and again, other people do that, like the Monroe Institute, for example. I appreciate, they have a similar kind of values on out-of-body experience and assistance. But for me, anyway, the package, the complexity, the completeness that is offered, and the explicitness of assistance and evolution is what's like. It's why I'm still involved in Conscientiology after all these years. And I've seen in a lot of the courses we've given in different places the positive effects of the energy work and the understandings that it can have on people, and especially if it resonates with you, right? If you've come to this life with an awareness of multidimensionality because you've prepared for it in the period before this life, as in what we call the intermissive period, right? Some of us have prepared for working with multidimensionality in the intraphysical life. And if you are in that position and you hear these conversations, it will resonate for you, right? It will be like, oh, yeah, this makes sense. This is logical. I understand this. And if you're in that position, then there is so much to dive into and so much richness in what we offer in this space that I think it's fairly unique, right? I don't know, there are other places like the CAEC around and of this approach of the depth of study that's on offer.
Definitely, thank you. And the power of the group, the group of researchers and people who have the same goal. So that's really powerful. We have a question here on the chat by Kelly Lopez. She's asking this: how does Conscientiology understand racism, xenophobia, and any kind of discrimination, taking into account the relevant aspects of human evolution, such as polycarmality and universalism?
That's a good question, Kelly. Yeah, I can start to commenting by my own experience because I'm trying to study universalism since I was a teenager. I think so, because I always been interested with extraterrestrial questions and also astronomy, for example, and try to understand the universe and the evolution. But years after I started, I also have more than 30 years of conscientiology. But some time ago, I recognize that I still had some kind of discrimination when I start interact more directly with extraterrestrial consciousness, and also extra physical consciousness that appears to me as indigenous. So I recognize people used to say to me, as a feedback that they can see with me some indigenous and some extraterrestrial, and I used to discriminate some. No, perhaps it's some kinds of just illusion, something like that, but I don't pay too much attention. And then I start to research some aspect of myself, some traits of manifestation, and I start to recognize that some kind of way of thinking are still discriminating that personalities, because I couldn't understand the connection then, the connection of them with me. So I start to reconfigure this way of thinking. I start to research about extraterrestrials and about the shamanism, for example, and then I establish some more connections. I recognize some connections from me to them, and I change uh, my way of deal with them. So for me, it was a good recycling about my way of my values and my way of thinking. So I think the conscientiology, with the possibility of making experiments that we can interact directly with different kinds of personality, these different kinds of evolutive level, can challenge us to improve our modus of manifestation, our way of manifestation. So I think, for example, also polycarmality is the questions, the kinds of karma. Okay, we have the common karma is the ego karma, the questions and issues related to ourselves. You have the group karma, the questions and issues about our group, our family, friends, professional colleagues. But the practice of polykarma, when we start to think the best, to try to do the best for all the people, for all kinds of culture, independently from the origin of the person. You can try to do the best to help the others. So I think it's a challenge for us to start to think less about ourselves and think more about the others. It's a good challenge that conscientiology make for us. So in course like that, a field course, we can improve our capacity to interact with different kinds of personalities. Because in multidimensional interaction, we get more and more opportunity to interact, not only out of the body, but during the state of, you know, uh, different the different state of the coincidence. This coincidence of the body can make us percept this different personality and different dimensions. So that's a good challenge for you and for us. I'm including this because I'm also trying to get better my level of universalism. So that's a good chance for us.
Thank you. Kim, what are your thoughts about Kelly's question?
Yeah, I think it's a really great question, and I was thinking here as I was sitting here that for me, I'll probably answer this, in part as an anthropologist, in part also as someone who's been quite active in specifically working with racism and studying, having conversations about racism as working with Aboriginal people in Australia, so with a very marginalized group in Australia, as well as conscientiology, right? And I actually would say that in itself, um, conscientiology is a discipline, right? It's a field of study. And while we have some core principles, such as universalism as a core value, I don't think that by itself necessarily helps us really deal with racism, right, or xenophobia, unless we take active steps. And so for me, it's been working in that space as a white Anglo speaker, working primarily with Black Australians, and then also doing this racism work in the US with a lot of different people of color in the US. I did, and I have had to really confront my own racism, and to learn and to understand that we are all uh, generally, most of us, right? There's never an all, but that most of us in our different cultural contexts will be raised with some form of xenophobia and some form of racism. It's cultural. It's just something that we grow up with, and it'll be against some other group depending on which culture you're in and which culture you're from. And during over the years, this training, I could see that, for example, childhood education was full of racist bits of information that nobody even recognized as racist, right? It was in comics and it was in jokes and it was in TV shows, and it wasn't recognized as such. So it's a big part of unlearning. And I guess the framework of seeing ourselves as consciousnesses provides a very powerful framework to help us in this unlearning, if that's what we want to do, right? To really overcome those biases that we've been given with in our culture. And one of the things that I do find helpful, one of the ways I find helpful to think about a lot of this is when we start thinking multidimensionally, right? Extra physical dimensions, where we are when we're no longer in a physical body, we often speak of them as really more states of consciousness rather than places. So they unite people that share a certain state of consciousness. And so you'll find dimensions of people that are of the same religious orientation and the same racial and cultural orientation. If that's been the focus, right, for people across generations, which often, and when I say generations, of lifetimes, also of their own lifetimes, which in fact is actually often the case. And we're in a position now where we're trying to learn to move between those across our own lifetimes, but also when we're projected, right? You're projecting out of the body, and you want to be able to be in different dimensions and fit in and communicate with people to provide assistance. That's our focus, of all these different backgrounds, and this physical dimension provides a space for us to learn that, to develop that capacity to speak in more than one, not just more than one language, but also more than one register, right? So people of different ethnicities might speak, for example, Aboriginal English in Australia people are speaking English, but there's all kinds of different meanings to the words from mainstream Australian English. I'm sure the same would apply in Portuguese and Spanish and many other languages, right? You have these different registers, different capacity to interact with people. And so, yeah, I would say about this question, in terms of stepping into Polycarma, Conscientiology provides a framework. For example, the idea of Polycarma, right? We even have to think like that to expand our consciousness. But we might want to draw on other understandings and disciplines to develop the tools to help us achieve that.
Thank you. It's been a great talk. I think we're reaching the end of the session today, but I would like to ask both of you, to perhaps say a few concluding thoughts or a provocation or an invitation before we close.
Okay, Márcia. I think universalism is always a challenge for all of us, because we are still living as an animal, as I had said, but also we have different opportunity, especially with parapsychic experiments like we are going to do during the course. But I just to ask you to think about the parapsychism in your everyday life, because you can get in touch with different consciousness, not only in the depends on the space, like with different cultures, different countries, but also you can get in touch with different consciousness during our parapsychic experiments, during parapsychic phenomena. For example, during the energetic connections with different kinds of consciousness with different connections and communication, like I had said, with telepathy during of the body experience. You can also get in touch with this consciousness with synaptic signals or energetic signals, that we can keep in touch with different consciousness. So by the parapsychic way of life, like if I can say something like that, we have the chance to improve our level of universalism. So during your everyday life, using basic basic techniques of parapsychism, you can get in touch with different level of consciousness and start to improve your level of communication. And in doing this also, you will test your level of universalism. Because, for example, when you're trying to keep a communication with other consciousness, with high level, in a level of telepathy, if you have difficult to doing this, to keep this level of communication, you the situation will it show you that level of your level of universalism is very weak. So, as I have realized for me, it's very difficult to keep a high level of telepathy or interaction with high level of consciousness, because my level of universalism is so weak yet, and I'm trying to improving my parapsychism. The the level and kinds of out of body experience, the level and kinds of exovisions, and so that's why I'm thinking that we can improve our level of universalism in practice, not only as a philosophical way of life, but also in terms of changing our values of life. Okay, that's my challenge for you to apply the parapsychism in your everyday life, just to get improve your level of universalism. That's my message, my final message.
Thank you. Kim.
Well, I guess I was thinking about it something similar, but in a slightly different angle. So I would start with an invitation, right? Of course, I would like to invite anybody who's listening to come and join us in Brazil in August for the International Week, to participate in all the activities. And if you do, please say hello and say, that you let us know that you saw one of these videos and you were inspired to come and have the experience. But I also understand that people might just be listening because they're curious and want to understand, or coming to Brazil just isn't an option right now. And in that case, I would also like to, encourage you to embrace, start thinking about universalism as a practical technique that you can use for your growth as a consciousness. And where Roberto emphasizes parapsychism, which I agree is a really important value, I'll add then the sort of I feel the other side of the coin, which is in intraphysical life, right? Stepping out of your comfort zone in terms of the communities that you interact with. Maybe you can't come to Brazil, but you can go just to another place that's closer to you, but that's outside of what's familiar to you. And in those contexts, right, when you're in different cultural spaces, when you're dealing with people from different backgrounds and different languages and different racial backgrounds, then also have those interactions and focus on parapsychism at the same time, right? So this relationship between interphysical and multidimensional, because all of life is ultimately multidimensional.
Thank you. I want to sincerely thank you, Roberto and Kim, for your presence today, and all of you for your contribution. If this theme resonates with you, I invite you to join us in person in Foz do Iguaçu in August, as Kim just said. It's a part of a vibrant 10-day program. So this field course will be in this program. And it includes online and in-person activities, all grounded in universalism and consciential openness. So to enroll and learn more, visit our website, and please share this live session with others if you think someone might benefit. Let's stay connected through the International Week and beyond. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
Thank you, Márcia, and thanks everybody.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.